So this video is called "A Moral Case for Capitalism" by Prageru. Let's go ahead and check it out and we can talk about it.
Okay, we're told, so maybe capitalism is efficient. Maybe it generates more wealth than other systems. But what about values? What about things that can't be measured in cash? Things like kindness and loyalty and integrity. Well, let me say something that you won't hear very often. Let me make the moral case for capitalism. Let's go back nearly 12,000 years, to the moment when one of our ancestors made a...
Real quick, with this video that I'm making, it's not going to be basically arguing against capitalism and arguing there's a better system, but it will highlight like maybe the things that they don't mention. And in the US we have, and most of like Europe, we have like a mixed economy where you have aspects of capitalism where you also have like some state services like education, fire department, police department. And understand though there are powerful people out there, people who think like the Koch brothers, for example, who want everything to be privatized. They don't want there to be any public services at all.
World-changing discovery. It turned out that if you left seeds in fertile soil, plants would grow from them. Instead of having to forage, you could produce your own grains or fruits where you wanted. But it didn't take long for someone to make the next discovery. Rather than spending all year tending to your own crops, you could wait for your neighbor to bring in his harvest and then steal it. And then...
What I'm wondering now is if they're going to mention that basically over time it's transformed so that you can only grow food on your own land. You can only grow food on land that you own. So the idea that it's just as simple as you work hard and then you basically get rewarded from your harvest. Like now history doesn't really show that. Even with the feudal system or with sharecropping type systems, it's like people were working on someone else's land and getting a very, very small portion.
Came the truly diabolical discovery. If you wanted to maximize the ratio of effort to outcome, you could organize a gang of thugs and seize not only your neighbor's harvest, but everyone's harvest, regularizing your plunder through tithes, tolls, and taxes. And thus it...
Okay, I think we can see where he's going with this. So he's going to frame taxes as a form of theft, making it seem like if it wasn't for the government, you could just go and basically grow food and then you'd get all that food. But know that, again, this isn't necessarily arguing saying that capitalism isn't a good system or that there's better systems, but he's arguing, it seems that even taxes, even reformations within capitalism, that it's the government are the robbers when they come and can take part of what you produce through taxes.
Continued until roughly the end of the 17th century and the birth of modern liberal capitalism. Sure, there were premonitions before then, little tremors of freedom, but almost everyone on the planet still lived in servitude and penury. Every previous society was based on systematized oppression. Ruling elites would use the institutions of the state to loot its resources and then rig the rules so that their children would inherit the same privileged position. A Bronze Age slave empire was not so different in this sense from a medieval European...
Okay, and what he just described, how is that any different than the Walton family just passing down like their business to the kids, or like the Koch brothers' dad passing down his business to the Kochs, and the way that these individuals lobby the government to pass laws in their own favor?
Monarchy, or a 20th century African kleptocracy, or, come to that, from those modern states that have avoided the liberal capitalist revolution. Oppression, serfdom, and bondage were the lot of almost every human being from the moment civilization began until an eye blink ago. We don't know how lucky we are to live at a time and in a place where the rules are above the rulers. The great Victorian jurist...
Are the rules actually above the rulers? I mean, that's the hope, but you have to ask when you look at things that powerful people are able to get away with if that is always the case. A public defender is not going to, they're not going to usually spend the amount of time necessary to really defend someone well because they're so like swamped with basically clients they're working with.
Sir Henry Maine summarized them.
And I'll just throw in there, most people, if they had done the type of stuff that Trump has, they would already be behind bars in terms of like stealing documents in the way that he did. And with some of, the way that he had like the fake elector scheme, like other people that he's worked with have gotten in a lot more trouble than him. The idea that the top people in society, that they're treated the same as everyone else, that's a nice idea, but it's not always a true idea.
Move to modern liberty in 3 words: status to contract. In nearly every previous society, our relations with one another were dictated by status, that is, birth and caste. In a liberal capitalist society, we're free to make one-off, freestanding arrangements with each other without needing to ask anyone else's permission. Our agreements, our contracts, are enforced by an independent court system, and adult citizens are equal in the eyes of the law. That's it. That's the magic formula. Status to contract. Grant it, and the rest follows. It's the difference between North Korea and South Korea, between China.
Status to contract, that's a valuable thing. I'll agree with that. The name of the video is A Moral Case for Capitalism that Prageru made here. Does Norway and some of these economies that are mixed and maybe lean like further from capitalism than the United States, do they not have status to contract?
And Taiwan, between Russia and Finland, between Haiti and Bermuda. In a society defined by status, you get rich by sucking up to the people in charge. Emperors, or people's commissars, or presidents for life. But in a society defined by contract, you get rich by offering a product or a service to the people around you.
Okay, so sometimes people get rich by offering a service to those around them, but is that always the case? What about most recent young billionaires? Okay, so just to challenge what he was saying in that Prageru video, so this is a website showing some of the wealthiest people who inherited their wealth. Okay, so you have like the L'Oreal family, Walton, Kochs, so you look at this list of people that inherited their wealth, it's an extremely high amount of individuals. More Waltons. So the question is the new age of billionaires, are they going to be self-made, or were Musk and Bezos and some of these guys, the last generation, Zuckerberg, were they the last generation of self-made millionaires? Will we hit a point in the future where it's like you have these huge technology companies and then people are passing down the wealth to their kids? Maybe, maybe not, but him arguing that people get wealthy by creating something great, I mean, maybe at some point, but you have to question if we have economic royalists in which people are just able to pass down huge chunks of money to their family, and then if basically the family just keeps investing a good portion of it, they'll just stay wealthy forever. Their family will potentially just be set for generations just through investing it.
20th century economist Joseph Schumpeter put it, "The capitalist achievement does not typically consist in providing more silk stockings for queens, but in bringing them within the reach of factory girls." When I buy something on Amazon, yes, I'm enriching Jeff Bezos. I'm adding fractionally to his net wealth. But he is also enriching me, letting me buy pretty much whatever I want without having to get out of my chair. No other economic system rests on voluntary exchange. Every other system requires coercion. And that is the moral case for capitalism. Not just that it makes us richer, though it does. Not just that it raises the poorest on the planet, making our life outcomes more equal.
And again, the point of me making this critique, it's not to say that there are better systems in capitalism, but it's just interesting what Prageru promotes, the ideas that they're maybe like leaning young people toward. Why don't they critique the Koch brothers for inheriting just huge wads of money and then trying to abolish the Environmental Protection Agency, Department of Education? The Koch brothers, they had even like killed people with their factories, not following regulations. Why doesn't he critique like the Walton family? Why doesn't he talk about just the idea of inheritance? Like everything is kind of a positive spin, which, yes, I'm not saying that there's a different form of, like there's a different economic system that's better, but having regulations, taxes, having a mixed economy, those are pretty beneficial things when you actually look at history. Why don't they go into that or go into like the labor movement? Everything is kind of steered toward putting a really positive spin on conservative ideals.
Cool, though it does that too. No, the moral argument for capitalism is that it's the only economic system that values dignity and freedom and, yes, equality.
Okay, so capitalism valuing dignity and freedom, was that the case in the late 1800s when you had kids working in factories and people working for basically like hardly any money, treated really bad, didn't have weekends, like 15 to 16 hours a day, like slavery? That was capitalism, people making money. So again, the idea that it is the only system that offers dignity, freedom, and equality, it has that potential, but that doesn't mean that it always does. Again, am I saying a different system's better? No, but having some things that could be reformed in it, that's a reasonable view for people that have studied history.
It disdains distinctions of race and creed. One customer's money is as good as the next. As Voltaire put it in 1764, enter the London Stock Exchange and you will see representatives from all nations gathered together for the good of mankind. Here, Jew, Muslim, and Christian deal with each other as if all were of the same faith, and the only people called infidels are those who go bankrupt. Under capitalism, we need to think of what other people want, of what we can do for them. It's how we get ahead. Whereas socialism replaces our natural human relations with state control, capitalism draws us into productive networks of mutual dependency. We become more attentive, more empathetic, and thus more aware of the case for universal human rights.
Sometimes. Again, factory owners that were mistreating workers, I can't say that it necessarily made them more empathetic. I mean, you look at even Amazon, when you have workers having to pee in bottles because they're being pushed so hard not to take a break. Sometimes we want to make everything seem really orderly. We don't want to acknowledge a world just full of chaos and unpredictability, but definitely can argue that his video is an oversimplification and that it doesn't get into any like controversy or ways that capitalism could become better, maybe a more human-centered capitalism.
Capitalism doesn't just make us better off, it makes us better people. I'm Daniel Hannan, author of...
Again, slave owners in the South, they were following capitalism. Are you arguing that they were better people? It can make some maybe better as they're trying to like be nice to customers if they own some type of like shop or restaurant, but the idea that capitalism automatically makes people better, it can also lead people to cut corners. Look at Boeing, what's going on with their airplanes right now is they're maybe trying to cut costs, and you have planes that are like falling apart, whistleblowers potentially being targeted. Like the idea, it just makes us better people. That's just, I mean, it's oversimplistic.
Of inventing freedom, how the English-speaking peoples made the modern world, for Prageru University.
Okay, so again, in showing this, I don't personally want socialism. I own multiple properties. I have rentals. I invest heavily in a 401k. But I do believe, as an educator, that students should be exposed to arguments of both sides. And so, again, notice none of these ideas were brought up within that video. Just the idea that under capitalism, it's a small percentage that owns everything, and you can have jobs that, like, you had factory jobs that were set up throughout the US and that were sent overseas, and that's led to even more wealth inequality. Things like environmental degradation, that if someone can make a lot of money by not taking care of the environment, they often will. The short-term ideas, like short-term profits, so again, can lead to decisions that prioritize immediate gains over long-term sustainability. So I mean, outsourcing, downsizing, neglecting investment in research and development, imperialism and globalization. So again, not arguing for socialism, just saying that Prageru oversimplifies their ideas to try to get their kids to think conservative, and you want people to understand positives and negatives and potential areas of reform, and understand that there were people like the Koch brothers and other billionaires and wildly wealthy people that were fighting against things like Social Security, the Environmental Protection Agency, and things that benefited huge amounts of people.